Good evening. Welcome to the Spiritual But Not Religious Show. I'm your host, George Lewis. Thanks for joining us tonight. I've got a really superb guest tonight. I mean, she's in the trenches, really one-on-one, trying to bring peace into the world on a global level, but also right in the Middle East, right in the heart of all the conflict that's going on. You're going to love her. She's a great gal doing really, really good things. But before I tell you more about my guest for this evening, I want to talk a little bit about next week's guest. She's a personal friend of mine, Leah Chickley. I haven't seen her for 2 or 3 years, but she does a thing called heart-centered therapy. I want to tell you, this is marvelous stuff. What she does is, through the process of regression, they go back. It takes you back into trauma from your childhood or past lives or wherever it might have happened from, and actually goes through a forgiveness process that takes care of not just you but the family tree without ever having to re-experience the trauma like you do in standard therapy. I was gifted a weekend retreat up at the base of the Appalachian Trail about 5 years ago, and was really privileged to go through the process with her, and I discovered some things that are just phenomenally helpful and have caused some huge shifts in my life and in my story. It's really powerful stuff. So you want to be sure and be here next week. The following week is her husband, Bruno Chickley, who is a doctor. He's a brain surgeon. He just does all kinds of really cutting-edge things with the brains. You're going to have a great time with him. So be sure to stick with us for the next couple of weeks. My guest tonight is an internationally known speaker. She's an author. She's published several books. One of them really is kind of a cult classic that's really helped many, many women throughout the world. She does what's called circle work, and she's probably one of the foremost experts in gatherings for empowering women. And she's been doing this kind of work for over 25 years. Her name is Jalaja. I don't want to massacre your name, Jalaja Bonheim, and she's just a. I know you're going to like her a whole lot. I've been looking forward to talking with her. She's actually trained hundreds of ministers, teachers, social workers, psychotherapists, executives. She's very, very, very powerful lady, and she does some amazing work. So we have Jalaja on the phone.
Yes, we do.
Jalaja, I'm sorry we had difficulty with with your video. Gee, I was looking forward to being able to see you on the show tonight.
Yes, I was too.
Well, that's the way it is when you're doing this cutting edge stuff with internet, television and computers, and it's just it can be a real nightmare on some nights. We've had some real horrendous nights. But anyhow, we're glad to have you. Tom has got a very nice picture of you up on the screen at this point. For our viewers, these shows we usually have our guest in a picture-in-picture, like you see on TV, a fairly good-sized picture-in-picture, but it's only available live. So, Jalaja, it's in the archive version, it was going to be a picture anyhow. So I think we'll be just fine. And like who you are and what you do is so very good. I think that that's the most important thing here. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we get into to what you do, I want to establish some background about who you are and how you got to this point that you are, and then we'll do some, if you don't mind, we'll do some readings from some of the work that you did with some of the ladies in I believe it was in Israel, wasn't it?
It was actually in the West Bank in Palestine.
Right. Okay. In Palestine.
Yes, I would love to.
Okay. Great. Well, why don't you just kind of tell us, give us some background so that folks really know just why you're qualified to do what you do, because from what I can see, like you started this work on a deep personal level.
Yes, I've been doing this for 25 years, and the work really has evolved a lot. When I started doing it, it was very much about personal healing.
Let me just stop you for a second, because what
Yes.
I really want to do first is I want to get into some of your story, where you were raised, and some of how you came to this work before we.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Well,
think it's really
it's
important.
interesting because I was raised in post-war Germany, and I'm actually Jewish.
Right.
And that really had a major impact on me because I saw this country that had so recently been completely devastated by
Ravaged.
war.
Absolutely ravaged.
And so I think that instilled in me a really strong desire to understand what is it that causes us to do this, and what do we need to do to become a species that is capable of coexisting peacefully. Because I think it's clear that we've reached a point where either we're going to coexist peacefully or we're not going to exist at all.
We're going to destroy each other, and there's
Right,
no question.
right.
That's a big part of why this program exists, why the Spiritual Broadcasting Network is here, because I'm right on that page with you. So,
Yes.
so before you go further, were your parents in the pre-war Germany, or how did you get into post-war Germany? That must have been.
Well, my father was one. My father, with his family, fled in 1938, and he was one of the few Jews who, after the war, decided to go back to Germany.
Yeah, well, that must have taken some real courage right there, I would think.
Absolutely. I think for me also, it gave me a deep understanding of what it means to not belong to any one side, because I was Jewish and I was German.
Oh, wow, that's
So
kind of a
right
double
from the
bind.
start, it was clear that the problem is not what you are, what group you belong to. It lies much deeper than that.
Right.
And that really set me out on this spiritual quest. And I ended up going to India and studying Indian temple dance. And that really had a very profound impact on me.
Tell us some about Indian temple dance. I've not heard that term before, and it sounds very interesting. What's the purpose, and how does that affect you spiritually on a personal level?
Well, it's a very ancient tradition, thousands of years old. And in ancient times, these really, you should call them priestesses, because they lived in the temples. They were highly evolved spiritual beings. They were midwives, healers, teachers, dancers. And at the same time, they were sexual beings, so that they didn't have this split that we have in the West of sexuality and spirituality.
Wow,
And that's why, when you go to India today and you look at these temples, you'll see these amazing erotic sculptures carved on them. And so for me, it was really eye-opening to connect with this ancient tradition of women who made no separation between their sexuality and their spirituality.
Was that the reason for your book? I believe it's called Aphrodite's Daughters?
Daughters.
Yes.
Well, that really represented the merging of that experience, and then coming to the United States and starting to lead circles and finding that in that sacred space, women would tell stories that they would not tell anywhere else.
So let me kind of come with you on this, because I really want to understand your process. How did the dancing evolve into the circle work? What happened there?
Well, it's interesting, because people always say to me, well, where did you learn to lead circles? Is it a Native American thing? Is it what is it? And I really have to say I agree with Jung, because he said the circle is a very ancient archetype that lies within every human being. And for me, what happened was that I started leading groups. And right from the beginning, I knew that I wanted to work with a circle format. And I saw that when we gathered in a circle, a kind of magic would happen. A kind of intimacy would arise, a kind of very easily moving into sacred space.
At that point, Jalaja, what was the purpose of the circle? What were you trying to accomplish then? Was it the same kind of thing you're doing now, or was it some other?
It really, yes and no. The very first circles I led it was called the Movement Medicine Circle.
Uh-huh.
And it was really an attempt to convey the healing power of sacred movement. But right from the start, there was storytelling, there was healing, there were all really the elements of what happens today in my circles. And we still, in my circles, you'll find there's a lot of movement, music, dancing. Those are all important elements even now. But along the way, I began to understand that we are today in this profound collective process of transformation.
Absolutely.
And that the circle is one of our most powerful tools for supporting and quickening this collective transformation.
Well, when you say circle, that makes me wonder. You know, we hear tales, or about pre-civilizations such as Atlantis and the Lemurians.
Yes.
And so forth. Do you think that's connected, and that's a circle, and they were somehow or other more evolved than we were spiritually, and that we're circling back to that now? I mean, you may not even consider
I wouldn't
it.
say that they were more evolved. I mean, I would describe it more as a spiral.
Right. Okay.
That the place where, because I always say to people, tribal peoples had beautiful circles. They had an incredible understanding of the magic and the healing power of circles.
Yes.
But the circles we are forming today are global circles. And we are doing something today that no other people in the history of the planet has done, which is that we are evolving a global spiritual community.
Gee, and if you think about it, the internet is one big circle.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's called the World Wide Web.
Yes.
And that is another thing that we are really the first civilization that has the infrastructure, the technological infrastructure, to really build a global community.
And we also have.
So that's how people like yourself are using this technology.
Well,
beautiful.
And you know what? To go along with that, we also have all of the difficulty and the trouble and the fact that we're facing extinction pushing us into that also.
Exactly.
Because we just as human beings, we don't tend to change easily unless there's a fire under our backside.
But we got the fire under our butt now. That's for sure.
Well, it's definitely.
That's for sure. And I really see that wherever I go, people are waking up. It's really extraordinary to see. Just in the last 10 years, the change is amazing.
Yeah, and the difference between those who are awake and those who are sleeping is stark for those of us who are awake. I mean, it's very, very obvious.
Now, one of the things I try to do, because one of the beautiful things about the circle is it's universal.
Right.
So one of its powers is that it can include people of all different faiths, different cultures, and so on. And another beautiful thing is that we have a lot of people who, when you use the word spirituality or sacred space, they kind of have a resistance to that.
They got a New Age connotation to it.
Yeah. And so the beautiful thing in the circle is we don't depend on language. We put a candle in the center of the circle, or we ask someone to step into the center of the circle, and they begin to have the direct experience of what is that place? What does that mean? What does that connect me with? and you don't have to put words on it. And so I find that a lot of people who might have been closed to a lot of other forms of spiritual practice can really open to the circle.
Well, you know, I've had some many years of the circle experience that you talk about. For the last 28 years, I've been involved in recovery programs, and
Yes.
And like from the very beginning, the way that the meetings are, they are a circle, and what's amazing in that process, Jalaja, is that the amount of intimacy that comes out in this, semi-public kind of place with people who, are strangers one to the other.
Isn't it extraordinary?
Oh, it's extraordinary. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I really, on an inner level, I really have experienced what you're talking about. I know it to be very real.
And so, a lot of people these days are gathering in circles, but my mission really is to teach people to use the circle in the most effective and powerful way so that the work can go really deeply. So I lead trainings for a lot of people who are already working with groups, perhaps even with circles, but they want to be empowered so that that work can be really effective and go really deep.
Well, one of the things that I am certain of is that the transformation that you're talking about, the transformation that I believe in, and most of the people who we run into in the process of doing this show, is not going to happen from pulpits. It's not going to happen from a platform. It's going to be one-on-one, right down in the trenches, and going from one person to the next.
And that's so beautiful in the circle, too, that it's so clear that we're all equal. We're at equal distance from the center. And the leader is not in any way superior to any one of the members. So it's a very egalitarian form in which really each person gets to experience that they have a contribution that only they can make. And so it's our job as the circle to encourage them, to call that forth. And I think especially for women, especially in places like Palestine, or now I'm starting to work with women from Afghanistan, where women really need that encouragement that we say to them, yes, you have a voice.
Sure, and that
you
brings,
can make a difference.
And that brings a real question to mind as far as your circle. The one thing I know, when I listened to your videos, and I was totally impressed with what I saw and where you take these ladies. What do you do to build the trust that I see that has to occur in order to gain the intimacy? Because you talk about that these gatherings create a field of love so powerful that the participants really do experience unity and interconnectedness in life-changing ways. To get there, you have to do something to establish trust. Is there some method that you're using to get to that point?
Well, I think that the most important thing is to take people from the level of the busy mind into the heart.
Well, that's interesting, yeah.
I see what happens. A lot of groups, especially in Israel and Palestine, there's a lot of these discussion groups. And to my mind, they are not going to get there because they're not going deep enough into the heart. And so, let me just give you an example. One of the practices that we often do at the beginning of a circle is what I call the heart greeting. And if you and I were to do the heart greeting together, we would be standing facing each other in silence. Probably there would be some beautiful music playing. And then we would each place our hand over the other's heart.
Oh, wow.
And close our eyes and just send a blessing to this person.
I can see why most of your people are women.
Well, I do work with men too, and they love it. They love it. And I think that more and more men, I get so many times women come home from a retreat and then their husbands or their boyfriends call me and say, wow, she was in such a great place. I want that too.
That's fantastic. The power of example.
But that shift, that is really the art of the circle leader, to take people through that shift.
Right.
So that they come into that place of the heart.
Well, the guest that I have coming on next week does a very similar thing, because during all of the regressions and things that they do, if it's very obvious when you're coming from the head and when you come from the heart, it's like talking to two different people.
Exactly.
It's totally
and
different.
I think it takes a lot of courage, though. And I think one of the reasons people stay in the head is because they feel safer there.
Absolutely. They got a memorized story they can tell you over and over with no problem whatsoever.
Right.
Not the uncharted territory that you take them into in your circle.
And, especially when you're working with people, like when I bring Jews and Palestinians together, they are basically coming from a tribal heritage.
How is the chemistry early on in that? Is there a noticeable thing happening?
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah, it has
huge.
to be.
Last year when I went this year to Israel, but last year I went during the Gaza war.
Uh-huh.
And people said to me, oh, don't even bother. They're not going to come together. There's just too much anger and pain and hatred and all those emotions. But they did come. But of course they came with tremendous pain and fear and resentment, and the shift that happened, and this was only a 2-day retreat. It was like night and day. I mean, they left really feeling a sense of sisterhood and love for one another.
Well, you know what? I just had an idea. The next time that you go to Israel, excuse me, why don't you call Tom and I, and let's see if we can hook up and do a show with you from there. We did a show with Rabbi Itzhak from there, and it was a great show. And we might be able to do something to help promote what you're doing. I'd love to.
That would be lovely. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And just for Tom just corrected me. I have mistakenly said that the Chickleys are on next week, but it's not. They're on the 24th. I have another guest next week. So, thanks, Tom. Yeah. Well, let's come back to where you were at, and like in the videos, I actually came to tears when the dance scene came up in the one video. Mm-hmm. When I watched the joy going on, it was like really powerful. Yeah,
it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
What is it?
And that to me,
somehow or another there's this, the Sufis, the whirling dervishes, they and just Sufis in general, use dance also, and there's this spiritual connection happens with dance. Do you find that when during the process of this?
Yeah. We were talking before about the Indian temple dancers,
right?
And that was really the gift. The deepest gift I got from that was this understanding of the way that spirit moves through the body. And so often I get people coming to these circles, and in the beginning they say, oh, I don't dance, I can't dance. And then by the end they're just saying, I'm going to dance every day, I love it. But you have to take the fear out of it. You have to take that, because a lot of people feel very self-conscious, or they think they're going to do it wrong. So you have to create an environment where people can just experience their movement from the inside out.
So once again,
instead of worrying what they look like.
Well, exactly. And so what I'm hearing you say is that same journey that you have to bring them down from the head down to their heart.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Because that fear of how we're going to look can be as difficult to overcome as a fear of being harmed in death.
It's scary.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Scary.
Yeah, it's very powerful stuff.
Mm-hmm. I think that we do come from 4,000 years of patriarchy.
Yes.
And one of the things that patriarchy has given us is this association of the mind with the masculine,
yes,
and the heart with the feminine.
Absolutely. Feelings and emotions, feminine.
And obviously, it's nonsense. We all are heart and mind, but we've been taught that. And so men especially have these barriers to overcome because they have been told, if you really connect with your heart, if you really allow your tears to come up or your vulnerability to show, then you will not be masculine.
Well, there's another aspect to that too. That I think is equally powerful in the male thing, and I really see it with the people that I talk with. Everybody has a higher percentage of women than men, and like it's been that way for years. It's getting better, and that is that the three main religions, Jalala, are all three of them talk in their scriptures in terms of war and warriors and how they're going to conquer other people in the name of.
Yeah.
And so it's just embedded almost at a cellular level.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
And I think that was part of what Jesus really wanted to change. He was really a teacher of the heart.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, love your enemies. What a message. What a message.
Powerful message. And
powerful message.
Yeah. And not only did he teach that, but he did that.
He lived it.
And I think that was, I believe that fact was what captivated his early followers so much, was that he was the example.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so very much so.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us, you use touch and holding in your work. What's the impact there?
Well, there again, I mean, we're sort of circling the same issue with the movement,
right,
and the heart and the touching. It really is all about coming out of the head into the heart and coming into a place where we can soften, where those shields, that armoring that we hold, can dissolve.
So I have this picture of a Palestinian woman whose son or nephew or husband has been killed by Israelis, and an Israeli mother who's had the same thing happen, sitting across from one another in one of your circles.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to be. I mean, to be able to see them holding one another.
It's very powerful, and one of the I mean, every time I go into these circles, I'm always amazed. I learn so much.
I'm sure.
And in this circle in the West Bank, one of the things I learned there was that these Palestinian women, on the one hand, they're so warm and expressive and passionate, but then they said to me, we don't hold one another, we don't touch one another, and we don't even hold our children
at the family level. Then, yeah.
And they said, we're going to go home and we're going to hold our children and tell them that we love them, because we've experienced now what that does.
Have you had contact with these women post your circle work? Are you?
Yes.
And do you talk with them and find out if they really are able to do that in their home, or if they get some kind of backlash?
It's a mixture.
Right.
One of the reasons I feel so strongly, not just about going there and leading circles, but training them to lead their own circles, is because the real shift can only happen when those circles happen continuously within their own community.
Right.
And so one of the women that we brought to the circle work training here in upstate New York last year was one of these Palestinian women. And so she is now leading circles for them.
Have you been able to bring an Israeli woman into that process yet?
Yes.
Okay, so that's...
And it's beautiful for them, and it's also beautiful for the American women.
Do they network back and forth?
Yes. Yes.
That's
and
really
this
phenomenal.
year we are bringing 3 women from Afghanistan to the training. who just contacted the Institute for Circle Work out of the blue and said, we found your website, and we live in a country with a lot of violence against women.
Wow.
And we need this.
Tell me,
can you help us come?
Is your organization, it's a nonprofit organization?
It's a nonprofit organization,
well,
yes.
I just want to encourage our audience to, Tom is putting the website up in the chat room, but tell us the website, for those people who may be viewing later. And I've
the easiest way is just to go to www.circleswork.org.
So it's with a plural, circles.
Circles Work.
Is there a way for them to make a contribution on your website? Because I think
absolutely, and we very much appreciate it, because our work is growing fast, and these women who really need our support. And in Afghanistan, the average annual income is $250 a year.
Wow.
So they need our help.
I don't. You're the first person and first organization that I've pitched for contributions. But for those out there listening, you couldn't do anything, I don't think, more worthwhile or more really so like right on the firing line to help create real peace over there. And it's going to have to come in the back door, just like we're doing here. It's not going to come in through governments. It's going to be right down here.
No, it's not going to come from the top down.
No, it's bottom up.
No,
for sure.
No.
So let's talk about your Afghan project. You've kind of like broached the subject there. I have a couple of things before we get into that. You're treading in some very dangerous kind of territory. I just read an article where a couple got murdered in Afghanistan because they eloped. And so
yes.
Which is so you're talking about the thing between men and women and that dominance. Have you had any kind of threats or anything that frightens you other than just the generalities of it?
I've never felt in any kind of danger at all.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that.
The same can't be said for some of the women.
Yes.
And especially the Arab women in the circles. One of the things I wasn't really aware of until last year was just how common these so-called honor killings are.
Oh, it's amazing, isn't it?
And I realized that several women in the circles had close calls.
Wow.
And for them, just coming to the circle was a tremendous act of courage.
The one thing that in my zeal to talk with you that I forgot to have you do, and I think this might be a really good segue for right now, you'd agreed to read some of the writings from the circles for us. Would you be willing to do that?
Yes.
Oh, please do.
I'll perhaps just read one or two, and let me just give the background to this.
Yes, please.
One of the practices we started doing in these circles is doing a little meditation where we sort of feel that web of connection between women worldwide. And we really feel that our circle is one among thousands of circles of women who are trying to make a difference, trying to bring peace. And then I invite the women to write a letter, imagining that they are writing this letter to all the women of the world.
Oh, wow.
And we've started posting these letters these are actually on my website, which is jalajabonheim.com. You can read some of them. So I'll just read you a few. Now, some of the letters that were written in this circle in Palestine, they're up there in Arabic, so I can't read them to you. If anyone knows Arabic, you can read them. But I'll read you a couple from the women who actually did speak English and wrote in English.
Okay. You use a translator during the circle, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Say that again?
You have a translator during the circle?
Yes, we have translators, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, please.
So this woman writes, to all the women of the world, we in Palestine feel your suffering. We, the women of Palestine, are with you. I send love and compassion to all of you. Happiness is the only thing that cannot be the result of wealth. So be strong and raise your voice. Stand up for your rights. Never give up, and do what feels right to you. So here's another one. As a woman, I feel women's pain and frustration. Looking around the world, I see that women's needs and rights are the same. In the end, we share so many things. I am a proud Palestinian woman, and I would love to give all my sisters in the world courage and strength. I believe that women can change the world with the great love that they give their communities.
Wow, those are powerful. You're welcome to read another one.
Yeah, and so I could go on really for hours, because these.
Well, read us one.
In some ways, I feel like I often feel, it's strange, as if one voice were speaking to us through many channels.
Oh, yes.
And that one voice really is the voice of wisdom, the voice of love, the voice of peace. And it comes through all of us in different ways.
Absolutely. It's like diamonds. It's just refracted. In the light comes in and it goes off in many different colors and many different. The diversity that we so abhor is what we need to begin to embrace. Yeah. It's very, very powerful. If you'd like to read one more, I think that those are so very powerful. That would be great.
Yes. Let's see which one. It's hard to even choose. Well, I'd like to read you one actually from the Palestinian women that came to the circle work training.
That'd be great.
And she wrote this at the circle work training, which happens at this gorgeous retreat center in nature in upstate New York.
Yeah, you have a picture on the website with a lake overlooking a lake.
It's like paradise. And for someone coming from this cramped place that is the West Bank, where there's hardly any nature, it was really amazing to see it through their eyes. And so she wrote, I will not achieve inner peace and happiness until you do.
Wow.
I can touch your tiredness and feel the beads of sweat that go down your forehead. I can feel the exploitation. I can hear your pain coming up from your mouth, the crying, the screaming. I can hear it. It is hurting within my soul, because I am part of you and you are part of me. I'm sitting here on the ground, and in front of my eyes, I see a beautiful blue sky and amazing green land. And I wish that your eyes could see it in this moment. It is like the Divine Mother calling her daughters and praying for protection and love. I have a longing that all of you could join us in this holy and unique place and join the circle with these wonderful women here. This is the only way that will lead us back to our wisdom, our knowledge, and to the real source of love that can serve the world and the coming generations in light and love.
That's particularly poetic too. Tell me, it really makes me wonder the women that are coming to your circle work. What's their socioeconomic kind of circumstances?
Well, it's a wide range. I mean, one of the reasons I originally founded the nonprofit organization was because we wanted to make it possible for women who could not afford to come to the training otherwise to come.
Right.
And so there is a really large range. Many women who come are, in some some way already involved in the healing arts, social workers, teachers, therapists, ministers, rabbis, but others are just people who don't, sometimes, people come, they don't even know why. They just say, I had to be here.
That little voice inside.
In Israel, also, a lot of them are activists, peace workers, really a wide range of people.
So you're gearing up to lead a week-long training for women, in September?
Yes. This is the Circle Work Leadership Training, which is where I train other circle leaders.
Is there openings for folks to still come, or are you booked up?
Yes, they can still come. You can check it out on the website. Look at the Circle Work Training. It's an extraordinary event. It really changes people's lives, and it gives them an understanding of a whole new kind of leadership that is based on, you might say, on the feminine, but it's really based on that heart listening, deep listening, receptivity, great respect, and it also takes a lot of skill. Sometimes people think, oh, the circle is something simple. I just, sit down with some people and we have a circle. But the human psyche is complex.
Very.
And sooner or later, you're going to run into difficulties because we all have an ego. And so I teach people how to create a space where people can really feel safe. Because unless they feel safe, they are not going to go to that deep place where the transformation really can happen.
That's the thing that makes me wonder about, when you have men and women in a circle, what the dynamic is there. In my experience, we tend to talk differently when we're in that co-ed environment as a group of men talking.
Well, it depends on what population I'm working with. If I'm working in the Middle East, it's essential that it's just women, because these women, some of them won't even unveil when men are present.
I'm sure.
But here in the United States, I find that it takes a little longer in a mixed circle.
Right.
For that trust to evolve. It's a little slower. It's not quite so immediate, but it happens. And we go to the same place.
Yeah,
and it's beautiful.
I can absolutely believe that.
And a lot of the students that I've trained do lead circles for men as well as women. And I think both are absolutely needed.
So just as kind of an overview of your your experience with these folks, the Palestinians and the Israelis. Did the people, want the war and want the difficulty, the conflict that's going on, or is it? Are we talking about governments here? What was your feel for that while you were there?
Well, it's certainly, the governments are, I think, a major part of the problem. I feel like 90% of people on both sides just want to live their lives. They just want to raise their kids and have a normal life.
Well, it seems to me that one of the things that you must do so well is that the ladies or the people who leave your circle must have reached some kind of deep forgiveness. And without that, I don't see how there could possibly be peace there. Am I right? What do you do in the way of forgiveness? Do you do anything at all, or does it just happen?
Well, you can't force forgiveness.
Well,
it has to be authentic. But I would say that everyone in the circle holds the intention, the willingness. So even if they're not, they might say, I'm not yet there.
Right.
I can't yet do it, but I'm willing. I'm willing to get there. And that's really what matters.
What's interesting about that is I'm hearing the same experience with, people who are trying to heal from traumatic childhoods, where they've been sexually abused or they've been physically or emotionally abused, is coming to understand that you're not condoning the act.
No. No.
Which is huge in that process.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
So, so the reason that you have mostly women in your workshop is because of from the area that you're coming from. There is that what you?
No, even when I work in the United States, I love working with women's circles. I just feel that women right now are on the forefront of the change that is happening, and that by empowering women, I can really contribute the most to making that change happen. And it's not that I don't, love men and love working with men also. But I do feel, when you look at indigenous cultures, they always had separate circles for men, separate circles for women, and circles where they came together. So I think we need all three.
I absolutely agree. I'm quite sure that we need all three. But it's the feminine energy, I think, that's so vital. And when you talk about men who do come to your circle work, they must be more in touch with their feminine energy.
They are, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are in general men who understand the importance of opening their hearts, who are not afraid of their own sensitivity, their gentleness, and so on. Yeah. But, I think more and more men are getting to that place.
Yeah, I think so, too. I think, there's, because of the huge diversity in people, in situations, in countries, I think it takes every kind of light worker, if you want to call it that, or peace worker or spiritual worker, everything that we have out there that are actually, they have the same intent that you do, is to bring us into a state of peace.
Yeah.
We're all searching for these things that we think are going to make us feel better, but the bottom line is what we're really searching for is that peace of mind.
Absolutely.
That's the grand prize.
And that's where, the circle takes people to that place of inner peace. And when you're at that place, you see the outer challenges in a completely new and different way. And you respond differently.
I would suggest to our audience that they take a look at some of the videos that you've got them on YouTube and on your website, and you can physically see that peace of mind in the face of these ladies, these women who live in these areas of huge conflict. I can't imagine what it must be like to have your day-to-day existence with that kind of thing going on. It's difficult.
But I agree, and I would say I feel like we here in the United States, we've got our own set of challenges.
Oh, yeah.
Because we might not have the bombs and the violence and the poverty, but we have a level of stress and busyness and exhaustion. I see it, a lot of times the women who come to the week-long retreats, it takes them 3 days to just begin to shed that level of tension and stress and the mental busyness. And that, too, is very, very damaging.
Well, on top of that, Jalaja, is this idea that we have no value unless we're wealthy. And that's just such a monumental problem, and it's so like in this country for sure. It's
I'm hoping that the economic crisis might have a little bit of a positive side effect in that respect. That more people can begin to go, I don't have so much right now, but actually I'm fine. I can maybe spend more time with my family or my friends, or, that it could be an opening to that kind of awakening that money is not the source of happiness.
Well, that kind of difficulty, financial difficulty, when you lose your business, you lose your home, you lose your way your income is a great leveler, and it tends to wring the pride out and bring a certain amount of humility. I'm quite sure that that we must find our way to as much humility and compassion as we can find. Listen, we're down to about a couple of 3 minutes left, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to afford you the opportunity to say anything that you would like to talk about. You got a new book coming out, whatever you'd like to talk about in this next couple of minutes that we've left out.
Well, I think I'd just like to say to people that, we often feel like we can't make much of a difference, that the challenges, the global warming and so on and so forth are so huge. And I really want to say to people that if you can find that place of inner peace, it's not a selfish thing to do. Sometimes we think, oh, that's just self-indulgent.
Absolutely.
Actually, it's the most important contribution you can make. And it's not about just going into a cave and not taking action. We do take action, but the action that we take from that place of inner peace is really the only effective action. So, whatever you can do to find that center, whether it's your meditation or going to a circle, going on a retreat, don't tell yourself, I don't have time. Don't tell yourself, oh, it's not going to make a difference. We are collectively waking up, and there are millions of us.
Absolutely.
And it's sort of like immune cells. One immune cell can't do anything, but when there are millions of immune cells, they can heal a body. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to heal the body of our planet.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jalaja, you are a wise, wonderful woman. It's just been my pleasure to have you on the show. When you get the next one in the Middle East there, your next event, give us some notice so we can set it all up, and let's put our heads together and see what we can come up with to get you some more exposure. I really appreciate the work.
Thank you. I would love to do that, and I really want to say thank you so much for the beautiful work that you are doing here. And
I guess we're probably right out of time at this point. So thank you again, and we'll talk at a date soon in the future. Thank you so much. Yeah. Good night now. Wow. I don't know if anybody else is as impressed as I am with this woman, but Tom, that's so powerful to be, like in the trenches, really doing things where, I think the only real teacher of any consequence is the power of example, and she's sending examples back into these conflict-ridden areas that are going to start causing some deep shifts there. So be sure and come back next week. I'm sorry I've told you about the wrong guest, but I guarantee you that next week's guest is as interesting and maybe even more interesting, so you'll want to be sure and come back. In the meantime, don't forget to accentuate the positive and have a fantastic week.